Hi, I'm Emily from Emily Bakes Cakes, and I am here to demonstrate how to make mini moon pies. Now, that's M-I-N-I for mini, for small, versus many as in quite a lot, although it does make quite a few moon pies. So this was a recipe that I tried because I saw it one time, and I think it comes from America's Test Kitchen, but I'm not exactly sure. It might be Alton Brown, I don't know. But it is super fun and delicious, and back when I used to love doing complicated recipes, this was one that I liked to make a lot. So one thing that I did discover, and I don't know if it's because I am just not as generous with the amount of marshmallow that you make to put in the inside, but I double the amount of cookie dough that you make in order to use up all of the marshmallow filling. So what you do is you're going to make a thin, fairly crisp cookie, like think of the inside of a Thin Mint, like that kind of a cookie, and then you make a homemade marshmallow and you put that in the middle, and then you dip it in chocolate. And I've always wanted to make these into Thin Mints. If there are any left over, then you just dip them in the chocolate and they taste amazing and delicious, and they keep for a long time. So anyway, I start out with 3 cubes of butter, and I had one that was frozen, and you can see I kind of melted it a little bit much, but I found that if you aren't having completely softened butter, that it's okay to just kind of cut it up into slices, and then makes it easier to be mixed. So this is kind of an interesting shortbreadish type of a recipe, cocoa recipe. So if you were just making it the regular version, you would only have 12 tablespoons of butter, but since I'm doubling the amount of cookie dough, I used 24 tablespoons of butter. And we just put everything all in at the same time. So I'll do, if you want to just make less cookie dough, or if you want to make the amount of cookie dough, and you'll see at the end how the proportions kind of work out. So, all right, so we have 24 tablespoons of butter, and then I'm going to add in, if I was making a single batch, then I would put in 3/4 cup of powdered sugar. But since I am doing this double batch, then I am going to put in 1.5 cups. My mother-in-law got me these excellent cup measures that came with all different kinds of, like 1.5, 1 1/3. So that's been super convenient. Next, we're going to add in the cocoa powder, and of course I'm using my super great cocoa powder that I love. And we're going to add in 1/2 cup. So if I was doing just the regular amount, then I would just put in 1/4 cup, but I'm making the double, so I'm putting in 1/2 cup of cocoa powder. Next is cornstarch. And if I was just doing the single batch, then it would be 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, but since I'm making the double, I'm adding in 4 tablespoons, or 1/4 cup. You can probably hear our dog whining in the background. She thinks it's dinner time, and sadly, it is not dinner time. She is super sad about not being able to eat all the time. So she's really sad in the background. So if this was a single batch, then it would be 1 cup, but since I'm doing a double batch, I'm adding in 2 cups of flour. Okay, and then the last thing is vanilla. And so you're supposed to add in 4 teaspoons. Well, if you're doing a single batch, it would be 2 teaspoons of vanilla. For a double batch, it would be 4 teaspoons. And I can't remember if I just did 3 or 4, so we'll just add in 1 more extra for fun, because a little extra vanilla won't hurt anybody. Okay, so now we'll just put this, and we'll mix that up. And once again, we want to start it fairly low so that we don't have a big huge pile, because I think some of the butter might still be a little bit frozen in certain parts. My microwave is not the best, so we just want to start it out low so we don't have a big huge fluff come up and hit us right in the face, because that's less fun than you might think. So we're just going to mix this together until it comes together into a dough, and then we'll put it on some saran wrap. So maybe I'll turn it a little bit higher. See how that's doing. We'll put it on saran wrap and we'll put it in the fridge for an hour or so, just to get it firm. Because we're going to make it into a log, and just cut slices from that log and then bake them. Okay? Alright, so now it's funny because sometimes the powdered sugar comes up and I get a mouthful of it even though it's just in the air. Alright. Now these are my sister-in-law Stacy's. These are her very favorite cookies that I ever have made. And people usually look at them and think, oh, that's too much work. But really, it's not that much work if you want to do 3 steps. For me, I think the hardest part is tempering the chocolate at the end so that you don't have the chocolate become cloudy. And I've read so many books about it, and it still is kind of a mystery to me about what the chemical process is that's happening. Okay, so you can see that coming together there. I like to let the machine do the work for me. There we go. I think that looks pretty well mixed. Let's see how it feels. Yep. So, as you can see, it's more like a Play-Doh type of a dough. It's not super moist. I mean, there's no eggs in it or any other liquid besides the vanilla and the butter. So, all right. Now these are super delicious. I have to tell you, so when I made these, my kids love them and my husband obviously, but they wanted to taste what real moon pies were like, and we lived, out in Tooele, Utah, which they finally started carrying the moon pies at like Macy's or something, and so we bought them, and my kids tried them and did not necessarily like them, except for when they were super hard up for something sugary. They stayed in our basement for a long time. But anyway, so these are the real moon pies that I'm sure that they first started out making. Okay, so let's see. I'll just put this, I'll just dump it right here. Okay, let's see. This is fine. You know me, I like to get the last little scrapes of everything out. Okay, so just going to put this into a log shape of how big I'd like them to be. Because you cut them fairly thin. Okay, so let's see. Uh-oh, good thing that lid is on. Alright. So, let's see, you want them fairly uniform in length. And see, they seem thinner down here at this end. I'm not exactly sure how to make it get better. I mean, you can use flour for this. It's not that big of a deal. And it depends on how intensely you feel about having just like an absolutely perfectly round cookie. So, and how uniform you want it to be. Because, I mean, you do want it so that when you cut them, that they are kind of basically the same size, so that they fit together well when you put the marshmallow and you dip them in the chocolate. Okay, I think that looks all right. Let's see, and so we'll just roll this up like that, and we will put it in the fridge to get firm, because if you cooked it now, it'd probably just be a melty mess. But we'll come back in an hour and I'll show you how thin to cut them. Hi, so our cookie dough has been in the fridge for a couple of hours now, and you can see it's turned very firm. Now I'm just going to unwrap it and cut it into slices. Now you're going to put it in a 375-degree oven for 7 to 10 minutes. So you're not looking to make it very thick at all. In fact, these kind of remind me a little bit of Pringles. So, and the hard thing, obviously, is cutting them so that they stay the same thickness all the way down. My butcher knife was dirty, so I didn't use it. But that would probably be the easiest one to do. Now, this is why I say they would be great as like a thin mint substitute if you wanted to do that instead, just to take this dough and to put mint extract in it, and then to dip those in chocolate, and that's how you would have a thin mint. So, okay, well, my helpful daughter got out our other butcher knife that we have. Let's see. And so we'll put that on. You don't need to put any, you don't need to grease the pan. You can put parchment paper down if you would like. And they don't spread out really. I always think it's amazing when people show their fridge, when they take stuff out of the fridge like this, when they are cooking stuff. I would never do that. That's a special kind of person. So you see how many you can fit on there. And so you have to remember that for each cookie, it's going to take 2 of these. So I'll just keep slicing them and baking them. Remember, it's 375 for 7 to 10 minutes. And I'll show you what you're looking for. They'll look pretty much this exact same, except a little bit crispier around the edges. So we'll come back in a minute after they're cooked. Okay, so these ones just came out of the oven, and you can see they come out and they're a little bit soft. I had them in for 9 minutes. And really, you could keep them in for the whole 10 if you don't want to worry about it. They are just going to get really crisp once they cool down. And you can see they spread out just a little bit, but not too much. And they just kind of, they come off quite easily. Let's see if I just cut that right there to make sure. Oops, that doesn't matter. It'll be fine. Now, there's room for difference of opinion and how good these taste. My husband thinks that they don't have very much flavor at all, and my daughter thought that they had a good chocolate flavor. So these are not like a standalone cookie. You would need to add something to them, either a frosting or to dip them in chocolate. Like I was saying, I thought a lot about doing the mint extract either in the chocolate or in the cookie dough instead of the vanilla. And you can see even just between the first ones I put on have turned fairly crisp, and the ones that I just barely am taking off, they firm up quite a bit, which is great because once they are dipped in the chocolate and they have the marshmallow in them, then they absorb some moisture from that. So it's fine if you just keep it in for the entire 10 minutes. All right, let's see, I gotta move this over, create some room here. And I mean, let's see. Okay, so as you can see, I just kept cutting them. And let's see, I better get this piece off of there. But I mean, it really does just taste like a shortbread cookie. And just set the timer for 10 minutes if you're unsure. Because I think anything less than that, and they might be just a little bit too soft to get off of the pan. So anyway, so we'll just keep going with these until we get all of them cooked, and then we'll make the marshmallow. Okay, so we're back, and now we need to make the marshmallow filling for our moon pies. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make sugary syrup and boil it, and then add it to egg whites. But in order to make it far more stable, we're going to also add gelatin. Now, what we start out with is we get our saucepan, and we get a 1/4 cup of water. And all my 1/4 cups are dirty from the stuff previously. Then we're going to also add 1/4 cup of corn syrup. Now, I have found that this amount of marshmallow will work perfectly with the double batch of cookies. So go ahead and just scrape all that corn syrup in there. And then we're going to add 3/4 cup of sugar. Okay. So there we go. Now what we're going to do is we'll put this on the oven or on the stove, and we're going to let it cook to softball stage, or 235 degrees. I've found that it's easier to go with softball stage than with an actual temperature, just because sometimes once it reaches a certain temperature it just doesn't go very high, much higher. But you can always test it by taking it out and putting it in a cup of cold water and seeing, you know, how soft it is. I just have my trusty old thermometer right here, so we'll just set this over here. You don't need to stir it necessarily, except for maybe like how I'm doing right here, how you just kind of mix the sugar in so that you have the water and the sugar, and you just put it on medium, and it's going to just cook and be okay by itself. So I'll just go ahead and set this over here. Now, let me rinse off my hands. What we're going to do is, while that's cooking, we're going to soften the gelatin. Now, I don't know if you've ever worked with gelatin before, but I just buy a box of it at the store because I think it's amazing. But this is just unflavored gelatin, and you put a whole package in a bowl, and then you add 2 tablespoons of cold water. Now, if you have like a big thing of gelatin, that's a tablespoon of gelatin to 2 tablespoons of cold water. And what this is going to do is this moisturizes the gelatin. Actually, it's kind of cool because it makes it, it'll all turn nice and hard. And then what you do is you add it to the boiling sugar mixture. So let's see, we just break up all of the little pieces. Let's see, right there. I didn't grab a spoon, so that's why I'm using my fingers, obviously. However you do it. You can see it starting to get firmed up, but now it's going to be ready to turn into, to make our marshmallow mixture very stable. And then the last step of what we're doing is we need to get 2 egg whites and put them in our bowl and whisk them up. So we'll just get our large egg whites. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This egg yolk. Oh dear. Well, it looks like we just better start all. Okay, so now we need to get our 2 egg whites in here. And after that I had a little mishap where I was trying to get them in and the yolk just totally split all over the place. So just gonna get the egg white, and sometimes it's really interesting sometimes what sticks and what does not to the egg yolks. So, all right, so 2 egg whites. Okay, and I guess people can save the yolks if they want to. I think that many egg yolks kind of gross me out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this on here, and we're going to whisk this up. Whisk up these 2 egg whites until they have soft peaks. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start this mixing, and we'll go check on our sugar mixture and see if it's started boiling yet. Alright, so we have this and it started boiling. As you can see, you don't necessarily have to worry about crystallization because it has the corn syrup in there and also the water, so that makes it stay together a lot better, like work better, starting to caramelize or whatever. But really we're not trying to make a caramel here. We're just trying to make a super hot sugar syrup so that when we put it into the egg whites, it'll turn it into a meringue. Let's see, how does this look? So we'll come back in a couple minutes. So I think it's up to temperature enough. So what we do now is we take it off the heat, and what we're going to do is we'll add the gelatin. So here's what the gelatin looks like now, and you can see it's just become nice and hard. So I'm going to put this in here, and stir it in there and dissolve it. And I don't know if you can see how kind of cool that is, but it's kind of foaming up. Let's take that out. There we go. And it just dissolves nicely into our sugar mixture. And we just kind of stir it around until all of that gelatin is no longer in a lump. And that looks beautiful. Okay. All right. Now, okay, so you can see that it's kind of just foamy and soft peaks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add this sugar mixture, sugar gelatin mixture, to it and as we're whipping it. Okay? So we're going to turn this on and just kind of have this go in there. Let's turn it up just a little bit more. Oops, there we go. There we go. And just kind of put that in there. Every time I do stuff like this, when I'm filming it, I think, well, I hope it works this time because we're actually filming it, but if it doesn't, then I guess I just won't end up putting it on the YouTube. So, I haven't had anything fail exactly yet. So, we'll turn that up. We're going to add in a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. Just a little bit of vanilla, and we're going to just let that mix until stiff peaks form. Okay, so we can see it's been mixing for probably 3 or 4. I think that stiff peaks, it's stiff enough. I mean, it's still kind of soft, but it's just going to set up more and more. Now I have my piping bag, my pastry bag, and I just have a round tip because you're going to be dipping it in chocolate, so you don't even need necessarily to see it. It's not like you need to be fancy or anything. And the more that this cools down, like the more the marshmallow becomes firm. So that's why you want to kind of have all of this ready to go. So this is kind of a mess. I don't know how the best way to get things out. My daughter says to bang like that, which is nice and loud. So, okay. Now what we're going to do is we'll fill up this piping bag in order to pipe on marshmallow. This is one of my least favorite things ever. I hate piping things because this is such a messy thing. It always gets all over my hands and it feels like I always waste too much in the bag. So anyway, this is how much I love my kids though, that I'll do this because they like this, and also because how much I love you, my dear viewer, that I'm willing to do these for you. No, I'm making these because my son, I'm trying to get him something special because he has left home for a little bit, and so, all right, let's see. Let's get this down in there. All right, so we're gonna put it like that, and I didn't get it very even, and then you just kind of squish it out like that. And I'm piping it on the top so that you can have, when you dip it, that will look really pretty to have the flat be the top after you dip it in the chocolate. Okay. So, just a second. Ugh. And I've tried to put this on in other ways, not using a pastry bag, just like trying to smear it on, and that didn't work very well, sadly. So, let's see. And I think that that will make That's a good amount to have as you're putting this on. Let's see. My kids nicely paired these up. So as you can see, this is what I'm going to be doing now until the marshmallow is gone. So come back in a minute and you can see how many moon pies we got out of this amount of marshmallow. Okay, so we're done with the marshmallow cream and it filled 28 pairs. So you can see that. So we had about 10 cookies left over. My kids ate some. And these I'll just dip in chocolate because they'll be really good too. Now the recipe says to wait 2 hours for the marshmallow to really set up. And also, if you want to just make the single batch of cookies and then have really thick marshmallow, you can go ahead and do that. So you can see like that it's fairly dry. The thing about waiting is that I think it creates like a crispness on the marshmallow. Because when you end up dipping it, what happens is the marshmallow can ooze through any cracks in wherever the chocolate isn't particularly thick. Now this recipe, it calls for a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil and 12 ounces of dark chocolate. But I don't know that I want to use vegetable oil. As I was just sitting here thinking about it, I think I might want to put butter in it instead. And also, so we have 28 of these, so I don't think that about 1.5 cups of chocolate chips or 2 cups. I think we're going to probably need at least 2.5 cups of chocolate chips. So I'll just go ahead and pour this in. And I'm using my expensive chocolate chips. What did I just see in there? Quality control on my brand new opened bag of Calabo. I'm going to have to do some talking. Should I ask to see the manager? Just kidding. Okay, so on this I am putting the chocolate chips over the steam because the enemy is the water, obviously. So this is a 1/2 cup, but I'm just going to fill it halfway because like I said, all of my 1/4 cups are missing right now. So I'm just going to stir this. Now, oh, see, look, it's melting already. That's excellent. So the one tip that I have read, so here's what I'll tell you about tempered chocolate, is that it is amazing because it has the crisp crunch and then also it doesn't have the bloom. Now the ways that you avoid bloom is that you don't put chocolate in the refrigerator or the freezer because then it gets that white coating and it tastes just fine and it still functions really great, but it just has that look that's unattractive, which if you can afford to not have that, then you might as well, right? But this one book that I got about making candy, it had a really great suggestion, and like I said, I have tried so much to try and understand about how you temper chocolate and what the chemical process is and how the temperature and all of the things, but luckily they boiled it down to just this one tip where you melt the chocolate, and then to help avoid it if you did get the chocolate too hot is that you just throw in and of course they had proportions that if you use this much chocolate, then you melt this much chocolate, then you put this much chocolate in after, but it helps to prevent that bloom from happening. And so I think I'm going to put in just some more because I think that it cools down and does some sort of chemical reaction process. I don't know. I wish it made more sense to me. And here's what I'll tell you also about dipping chocolate, is it is just a pain in the bum is what it is, because your hands are just going to get dirty, there's going to be waste, and it's just going to make a mess. Now what I like to do is get wax paper and just lay out rolls of wax paper to set it on. You can use parchment paper, but you're not going to want to set it on your counter. And you're just going to want to dip it and then put it on there and let it sit for until it completely hardens up. If you put it in the fridge, like I said, because you're trying to hurry, which I have done, then you run the very strong possibility and risk of your chocolate getting that white coating on it that is the bloom. So we need to get this all melted, and we'll get out. I have marshmallow still on my counter that I need to wash and put down the wax paper. And I have found that the best way is to just use a fork for dipping chocolate or for dipping things. There was one Christmas I was incredibly ambitious, and I decided to make hand-dipped chocolates for all of my neighbors as a neighbor gift, and I had made sheet pans full of different types of fillings. And my lovely sister came over and helped me hand dip those, and at the end of that I was like, well, I never ever want to do that again. But then the next Christmas I was just filled with fond nostalgia and thinking, that wasn't so bad, was it? It was so bad. It was so bad, dear viewer. So anyway, my favorite kind that I made was caramel on the bottom and marshmallow on top, dipped in the dark chocolate. And I really liked that a lot. So here's what I'll tell you also, is that I have 3 packages of wax paper, because I keep thinking that I don't have it, and then I buy a new roll. Okay, so here we go. Let's see, let me get out my nice long fork, and I'm going to throw in just a handful, like I was talking about, and stir those around. Make sure those melt in there, and I think that I'm going to end up melting more. There's a really good chocolate glaze recipe that has you melt the chocolate and you put butter in instead of the oil, but I think that the oil here is to help it stay runny enough so that it can drip off. Let's see, have those chocolate pieces melted? They have not, but hopefully they'll make it beautiful. This is my gorgeous Calibo chocolate that I love so much. And it has that amazing, I never knew what they were talking about necessarily, about the crunch or the bite factor that you get, that crisp, super crisp everything that you can have with the nice expensive chocolate. And these cookies are actually a lot bigger than what I normally get. So put them in, flip them over, tap, tap, tap. You can see the bubbles on top of there. Let's see, should we pop them? There we go. And then we'll just set that down there. And so, I mean, the recipe says you need to wait 2 hours, but I mean, it's fine. And besides, if you have the marshmallow kind of oozing out, any holes, see like right there, see how there's like a little hole possibly? So there might be a little marshmallow that comes out there, but that just makes it look more tasty, right? Because people are like, ooh, I like the way that looks. I would like to eat that. So we just put it in, flip it over. And as you can see, you know, having that nice flat bottom, it looks really great. And we'll put this right there. And I'll just keep dipping these, and then we will wait till they harden up and take a video of what they look like on the inside. And you might worry that the chocolate cookie might not stay that crisp. And actually I looked at the recipe again, and I would cook it for probably at least 10 minutes just to make sure. But I mean, they stay really crisp. It goes to a really amazing texture. But it's a texture that I really like, and so you just have to decide for yourself like what you really like. Yeah, and I think it's good that I went with the vegetable oil instead of the butter, even though, oh, see, look, you can see where I didn't have that all filled in. Vegetable oil instead of the butter because of so it will be liquidy enough and not just be too thick on there. Although I guess having it super thick isn't the worst thing in the world, right? Having a delicious high quality chocolate thickly on the cookie. Anyway, so we'll come back later. Okay, so here we are the next morning, and the chocolate has firmed up. I mean, it still hasn't really set up to the degree that it has a good snap, but I wonder if that's just because we use the oil instead of butter. And so if you want it to make sure that it firms up more firmly, then I would put butter in. I'd put the 1/4 cup of butter in, or 1 or 2 tablespoons actually of butter instead of the oil in when you're melting the chocolate. But you can see I didn't get any bloom, although I did get oil or little spots of where there was the air bubble. And then this, I think I didn't stir in my other chocolate well enough, and so you can see that, but none of that worries me too much. I mean, they are not uniform in shape or anything, and obviously you can make them so much more beautiful than I can. Here's one that I cut open, and you can see how it has the layer of marshmallow, the 2 cookies, and the chocolate. I think that it would be, this is very, very rich, and so if you wanted to just do a single batch of the cookie dough and then put double the amount of the marshmallow in the middle, then that would be really great. But I'll tell you what, these are very rich. So here, I'll show you kind of, there we go. So I mean, it's just really a nice soft, kind of a cakey cookie with that chocolate. So anyway, they're super delicious, super rich. Give them to all your best friends, and go ahead, and I hope you make the recipe. I hope you try it, and I hope it works out for you.